Oh, hey, didn't see either. It's been about 5 years since anime's become illegal to talk about, or 5 minutes since I got my last main comment. Honestly, it's hard to tell the difference at this point. But I just need something to talk about, something besides anime, and it can't be the Gettysburg Address. I've already beaten that horse to death at this point. But what's something that isn't anime, has no connection to anime, but is similar, that I can ramble about for about 15 minutes? Oh hey, son of a bitch! RWBY is an American anime-like web series that initially started in 2013, but honestly the starting development of this series is just as interesting as the show itself. Like the show starting off of just the idea of how cool it would be to use the recoil of a gun to add to the strength of pulling on the scythe. RWBY is done by Rooster Teeth, with it initially being written and planned by its late creator Monty Ohm, who has a long history of different projects like Dead Fantasy where Final Fantasy characters and Dead or Alive characters do that whole fighting thing. It gained a pretty good audience because of the amazing fighting animation, and rightfully so. You know, out of sheer inspiration, I decided to start making my own animations, so I made this ball moving. I haven't gotten the moving part yet, but that's like 50% of the sentence I said. The ball is there. There's also a series Haloid, which had a similar concept, but with Halo and Metroid that came out earlier, but the point is Monty Ohm had a fanbase prior to his original creation and his joining of Rooster Teeth. So once it was revealed that he was getting his own show, Rooster Teeth fans were excited, Monty Ohm fans were excited, and people who liked weapons that were part gun were excited. That last group is actually bigger than you think. While the show came out not too long after the announcement, to create hype, 4 trailers were made showcasing the 4 lead characters that each correlate with the letter in the acronym RWBY, which these trailers were how we got our very first look at the show and the world, and oh my god, these to this day are still so damn cool. Have you ever wanted a version of Red Riding Hood that could kick your ass? Yeah! Starting off, the Red trailer is the very first look we ever got at the series where we knew literally nothing about it. We knew she had a red hood, she stood at a grave, she has a gun so she's packing heat, but then it turns into a scythe so she's packing heat and wheat. The song's lyrics in the background talk about each member of the team RWBY vaguely, and we get an awesome display of animation with this character, who we know is RWBY fighting these wolf-like monsters, like a heavy metal version of Red Riding Hood. Well, there goes my original script idea. I was gonna give her a guitar and everything. To say this created hype would be an understatement, but there are 3 more trailers each showing different types of action, like the right trailer that starts off as a vocal performance but becomes a fight between this character Weiss and his cool as hell night thing. It felt like the red trailer, but the fighting style was way different, which spoke wonders to how much variety the show can have, and how the black trailer showed more humanoid fighting, and we got our first bit of voice acting and world building. We found out there is red and there is trains. That's like 2 different roles right there. And god, I still can't get over how cool this is. This is as critically intelligent as I can get about these trailers. It's just cool. And then we have the yellow trailer that has a more hand-to-hand style, but its own RWBY way of doing things. But with all the trailers done, we are ready to get to the show. Which was such a fascinating view for a while. Not only is a small internet company making quotation marks anime, but anyone familiar with the company of Rooster Teeth was able to see internet personalities they recognize play these characters, but we can get into a story from this point. Which the first episode has a runtime of about 12 minutes, which, how much time do you think I have? I have a busy schedule right here. Yeah, I have time. RWBY's overall premise is there is a school of huntsmen and huntresses, which are people who fight to save people and go against Grimm, which are the monstrous creatures. In the first episode, we get a brief lore drop explaining dust, which is kinda just a magical type of material, and there is an explanation of what huntsmen's were. We get a brief hint of other kingdoms, but here we pan down to the current events, which shows a criminal robbing a dust store. Why did he turn to a life of crime with eyelashes like that? As they're robbing the place, we see a girl in a red hood, who we know as RWBY, listening to the opening of the show, which I think is a great touch, just reading the magazine. I like how straightforward this thug is by saying yes to the question of being robbed, but we already get the first fight scene in a series, which is RWBY fighting the criminals trying to rob the store. You think you're gonna get your crime all over my crunch bars? Ooh, you got another thing coming. She dispatches the thugs rather easily with a combination of her semblance. Semblance is a kind of like superpower each character gets. They vary in uses, but they kind of act like quirks or something from My Hero Academia, but more discreet. And a knockback of the gun and her scythe to get an extra impact on her swings. He starts to get away where the air vehicle made no noise until it got into a line of sight, which I get. I happen to think life is more exciting when I ignore stuff. But I'm not picky. He shoots her with his cane gun where someone swoops into the rescue, and then while she is doing her thing, which is either dust or semblance or I have no idea, another character jumps into the fray, which is the person that's flying the helicopter. I don't have enough chairs, you gotta stop inviting people. She starts throwing fire, the blonde-haired girl is throwing stuff of telekinesis power. It's a cool fight, and with how the past few events are, it's really setting up to show how varied people's abilities are and how attuned they are to each other. The criminals get away, and honestly, I find the effect of her exciting to being here really funny. But she's basically getting in trouble for fighting those criminals. They were trying to hurt the crunch bars. They talk for a bit when a white-haired man, Ozpin, comes in. He ends up mentioning Ruby's uncle, which will be relevant later, and he gives her an invite to the school he runs, Beacon, which is a 2-year jump for where she was now. So that's how you pass school. You know, that explains why I never did. We meet Ruby's sister, Yang, who was in the yellow trailer, who's excited to see her joining the school. We talk about how cool that is, then we get 2D characters for the first time ever, and a bit of world building talking about the Faunas, who are people with animal traits who are treated unfairly, and then we get introduced to a group known as the White Fang, which is apparently a not very good group of people. But I heard they have great dental hygiene, it's literally in their name. We get a bit more information about the school, and we get to see another person with some form of color palette, so we know is going to be important later, and opening. I thought this show was well paced, but they put the opening on the wrong side of the episode. Episode 2 has a shorter runtime of about 6 minutes, and honestly, it can be condensed pretty easily too. Weiss, who was in the light trailer, makes her first appearance and talks about how dangerous dust is, and you can tell because the container is obviously not sealed whatsoever, and that causes Ruby to sneeze, which causes an explosion. I have a few theories I'm working on. We get the introduction to the last shown member, which is Blake, who argues well against Weiss and then dips. So when Ruby's all by herself, the guy who puked earlier, Jean Arc, comes in, makes conversation. Jean is clearly not as cool as he wants to be, if that's a way to put it. She shows him her scythe. Hold on, was that a euphemism? And we get that it's also a gun line here, and then we get Jean's weapon that's a sword and shield that turns into a sheath. And then it turns out they were lost the entire time, which again, I can't say this enough, I like the writing. It's fun and it's pretty unique. It's not taking itself too seriously, but it's also not sacrificing anything serious to be funny. It's a good balance. But now we're on to episode 3, and at this point it's kinda clear that at least volume 1 will take what should have been one episode and we'll break it up into different pieces called chapters. Oh, that's what those floating words mean. The new episode starts off with Jean and Ruby making it to the entrance ceremony where the new students are welcomed in, and Ruby gets pulled away by Yang. While Ruby's talking about Weiss, one of the only few characters with a color palette, she's standing right behind her, so haha funny. Ozpin is a total bummer in his opening speech at first.
And all I see is wasted energy.
I heard the same thing a lot at my own high school, funnily enough. The rest of the students have like a slumber party in the hall for some reason. I mean, like, sure, but why? But that's where Ruby and Yang see Blake and talk to her a bit. We get an understanding of some of her personal philosophies, and she talks about a book about someone with 2 souls. Huh? All of Team Ruby's seen on screen together for the first time before teams are formed, and then next, part of credits. In the next episode of RWBY starts off where we get introduced to 2 new characters, Ren and Nora, and the fact that he wakes up wearing normal clothes implies that he does not have pajamas. That's a discovery for the war books. These 2 new characters are shown in a little display, just how different they are, but how well they get along. It's a great way of showing their contrast while they prepare for the placement test. Ruby and Yang have an exchange for the iconic I Drink Milk line comes from. So Big Dairy got to Ruby too. Is there nothing that they won't corrupt? Jean walks by looking for his vodka, which brings the transition to Weiss and another new character talking, Pyrrha, who, say it with me, I guess is pretty badass. Weiss tries to ask Pyrrha to be on her team, Jean asks Weiss, and I'm just trying to keep track of all of this. Jean tries to ask Pyrrha and reveals that he has no idea who she is, despite her being well-known, borderline a famous student. He does know the serial she's on though, but this brings me to a side point of I really like the presentation that RWBY has at times. The stylish visual gags feel less like they're trying to be anime and more drawing inspiration from it. But Pyrrha gets Jean away from Weiss the most reasonable way, you know, business end of a spear and whatnot. This is why I don't talk to people. You never know when that's gonna happen to you. But now we are where the best exams take place, the edge of a cliff face, and it looks like we have only unlocked half of the class so far. We find out how teams are formed, which has been a topic of the episode so far. teams last through the entirety of enrollment in Beacon, and specific partners are chosen from whoever you make eye contact with first. Why do they have fan fiction roles in their military? Then after that, everyone gets catapulted into the forest, and I mean, yeah, makes sense. Fight gravity to fight monsters, I respect it. Everyone lands all cool, Jean gets speared to a tree. At this point, I hope he has a sewing kit for that hoodie. A few pairings are formed, Ruby and Weiss, Blake and Yang, and I know what team they'll end up on, boy oh boy. Nora and Ren partner up, and finally Jean and Pyrrha. Eye contact is how I met my favorite blood donor, so it works out. While exploring the area looking for the relics they were to find, Jean gets hit in the face of a branch. This leads to Pyrrha trying to explain what an aura is, which is an interesting addition to the Semblance power system. Aura is kind of like a shield you can use to prevent from getting hurt. Anything with a soul has it. Pyrrha activates Jean's aura, and it's revealed that he has quite a lot. Episode 7, we're still in the forest. Ruby and Weiss talk, Blake and Yang find the relics, Jean and Pyrrha are in a cave where they find a giant scorpion. Jean gets flung and gets another chance to practice his landing strategy. Ruby and Weiss hitch a ride on a flying Grim, and when they fall, somehow the flung Jean is timed perfectly to hit Ruby. This is less of a nitpick and more just a question, but what the hell are the odds of that happening? Jean tries to catch Weiss, I don't even know how it ends up landing like that. Ruby tries to fight the giant scorpion, honestly I don't even know what she expected to happen with that. Fighting happens, and all 8 characters end up running to these ruins, where honestly a really cool group versus monster fight takes place. I feel like this serves just as good for the teachers as it does the audience. Everyone gets a bit of a chance to shine here, especially with Team RWBY, just how they climb the fallen rubble. It's so telling of each character's unique skills. This concept works with every other character too. Like, if I were to have to climb up that rubble, I would just die. One of my favorite songs in the show, Red Like Roses 2, plays in this fight, which is the continuation of the song that played in RWBY's Red trailer, but we get to see everyone highlighted here, but with nothing specifically pointed out to us. We see Jean and RWBY's natural ability to be a leader, and in general, this entire sequence is just so great to watch, even the way the soon-to-be named Team Juniper is so telling of their personalities. We focus on Team soon-to-be RWBY taking down the Flying Grim, which showcases RWBY's leadership, and honestly, just a cool shot all around. After that, we cut to where teams are decided, one of which is Team Juniper, with Jean Arc as the leader, much to his surprise. The other is Team RWBY, led by Ruby Rose, much to Weiss's surprise, which kinda creates a good dynamic of Weiss not being keen to be on her team. I can't help but wonder if these team configurations didn't add up to a color, would they just be kicked out? After teams are completely done being assigned, we see our villain making a deal with a Light Fang member, and we go into episode 9. Characters have gotten into their dorms, have done a bit of decorating, which is used to give some nice Rooster Teeth references as a whole. They rush to class, and Weiss thinks RWBY isn't really cut out to be a leader with how immature she's always act. I'm gonna start condensing the story more because I can't spend the time to go over every little detail. I have a really busy schedule. Yeah, I can't cancel this. Episode 10 opens to fighting a Grim in class for class. I've had to do worse presentations for school, so hey, at least you aren't talking about world history right now. RWBY tries to give advice to Weiss, and she isn't too crazy about it. RWBY and Weiss each separately talk to a different professor about the same problem. One who isn't confident, and the other who's too confident, a tried and true good way to do a scene like this. Though it seems to have resolved their issue and dynamic for now. We got to little Jean arc now, which explores the character of, you guessed it, Jean. We see him getting his ass kicked, and obviously he needs help with learning how to be epic in anime. We get a little more school life in the school life action anime by introducing a bully character. But through this arc, we find out Jean actually snuck into Beacon. Sorry for the spoilers, but a plot premise that was never really approached again after Jean was blackmailed by the bully for it. Thank God I've been wanting to add to this list. With a little help from Pyrrha, Jean overcomes that issue, and we do get to see a decent amount of character growth from him. Which, if I'm being honest, I do like how much growing all of these characters have had so far. They haven't been deep-rooted issues or complex problems, but from the start of the series, these characters are kinda different people from where they originally started. It's refreshing for a show to do that. I do think it's a little weird how we have 16 episodes in the series and we just had 4 about a character not in the main team. But I like Jean, so I don't mind. However, we are now in the last arc of the volume, which is centered around Blake. We start off with being told about the Vital Festival, and we get a hint of some kind of tournament that's coming up. Tournament arc? Maybe this is an anime. There's another dust shop that got robbed, like what almost happened in the first episode when the detectives mentioned that it's probably the White Fang. That makes Weiss make a remark which has Blake and Weiss have a little back and forth. Blake defends the White Fang as misguided, and Weiss just flat out doesn't like them. And then Weiss goes from talking about the right thing to talking about how all the faunists make themselves look bad. Enter Sun, who is a stowaway on a ship that just passed by. He's a monkey faunist that gives a little bit of trouble as he runs by, and he gives a little wink at Blake.
Where's my wink?
As they try to chase after him, Weiss runs straight into another person at full speed who isn't too upset about the situation. Good for her. I like her energy. But that's not too relevant to the events right now. With a later friend from RWBY and a misguided on social etiquette, RWBY has a new friend. And Weiss keeps acting a little bit yikesy about the faunus. Blake seems really upset about it, honestly reasonably so, but this is causing a divide between Weiss and Blake. Weiss reveals that her family, which runs a dust company, has been at war with the White Fang for years, and talks about the issues she's had with it. When referring to the White Fang, Blake accidentally says we, and when Blake runs outside, she takes off the bow to reveal that she's a faunus as well. We hear Sun's voice say he thinks she looks better that way, and then with a small time skip, it's revealed that she's been missing for a day at this point.
If this doesn't resolve soon, this is gonna make the prom in Volume 2 really awkward.
Sun and Blake come up with an idea to prove the White Fang isn't robbing the dust shops, which is finding out where they would go if they were robbing somewhere, and then stake it out. And bad news, the White Fang are behind it, but are working as more in general criminals than anything else. After Blake runs to fight them, Sun backs her up, and honestly, I just really love his weapon a lot. It's a staff that breaks into gunchucks, and the action just feels so cool. Out of all the weapons to tape a gun to, nunchucks seem like a really obvious good choice now.
But wait until you see my concept for the new best weapon. I call it the gun. You attach a gun to a gun.
As they're fighting, RWBY and Penny make it to the scene. RWBY gets knocked away, and a bunch of swords pop out of Penny's back, and suddenly reality stopped feeling real, and I'm not sure what's going on anymore, but Penny's kicking ass! And I think killing people. Yeah, definitely killing people. But all gets resolved, Roman gets away, Weiss and Blake make up, making for even more growth for Weiss this season. Mysteries get set up for Penny, Ozpin gets a message from someone named Crow, probably the person who taught RWBY how to use her scythe, and credits.
From my experience with a bunch of other shows and movies, I know there's going to be a post-credit scene, and I just really like sitting through all these names, waiting to see any news on any upcoming projects. It's just part of the excitement. It's part of the end on board now.
In a post-credit scene, we get the first view of a character who is shooting fire in episode 1 with 2 companions, and that's Volume 1. Honestly, for what it was, RWBY Volume 1 was really good. Did it have quality writing or production of a standard TV show? No, of course not. But what it did have was its own unique charm not found anywhere else, and honestly still not found anywhere else. The visual style with the way things are displayed always felt unique, and the combat to this day is still really cool. A lot of other animations in the show seem a bit rough, but all in all, I enjoyed it, and I see how this made me a fan of the show for a little bit at the very least.
The show has a good mixture of interesting problems that are unique to the world of RWBY, and it's also just a unique experience overall as of right now. And I can definitely see how it got popular with this kind of vibe. And I can see how down the line it eventually got like an actual anime. But I think the biggest takeaway lesson from all of this is adding a gun to anything makes it so much cooler.